We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday. We're in the middle of a long weekend. And frankly, this podcast is going to be a little different than you're used to hearing. There is no guests, there is no live. I didn't even feel up to pulling together emails at this point. I was playing with the idea of not even doing a podcast today, but I've made that commitment. So I decided, what the fuck? So instead of all those things you're used to, it's going to be once again Mike sitting in front of the camera behind the mic, just fucking winging it. Now, most people are uncomfortable about doing that, and I'm not. I've done it a million times, and I can talk forever if I really have to. The problem is I'm not feeling well. I mean, I'm not feeling terrible, but I've got a cold, I've got congestion. I tend to cough a lot here and there. That makes it very difficult to do the show. But if I'm doing it alone, I can start and stop it along the way, and I can save you from some of the expectorations that I might get involved in. And if I had a guest or if I was doing a live, I couldn't do that. So I don't honestly know how long this podcast will go, but let it be said, I still did the fucking podcast. I'm not suggesting it's going to be good, but I'm not suggesting it's going to be bad either. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and if it's just me, well, it's just me today. I want to remind folks too, um, those of you that listen to TikTok, I have a second TikTok account. It's called Rational Boomer TOO, Rational Boomer 2. And the intention of that second Rational Boomer account was to do something totally different than I do on my main account. There are other things I want to talk about, stories from my past, my experiences, and frankly, they're kind of interesting. At least I've been told as much. So I decided I would do that with the other account. And I want you to check it out if you have the opportunity. Rational Boomer 2. Guarantee it won't be anything like the main account, but at the same time, I'm not going to change the main account. I've said that all along on TikTok and even on the podcast here. When you come here, you expect something specific. And I'm not going to be one of those people that's so arrogant to say, well, I'm a genius, so I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want and hope you like it. Now, we're not going to do that. When you come here, when you come to TikTok, YouTube, you're going to get what you expect. But if you want something different now and again, check out the Rational Boomer 2 account. You know, as I'm sitting here on the weekend, I'm not feeling great. It's Sunday and a long weekend. There's not as much to talk about. That's why I thought, well, I can sit down and just jabber away. It may not be great, but it's consistently long. I can talk a lot. Sometimes I think my quantity is bigger than my quantity. My quantity is bigger than my quality, I should say. That's not always the case, but what the hell? We're here. We're going to talk. And you know, there's a number of things that are going on in the country, politically speaking, that I find rather annoying, and I know you find it rather annoying too. One of the things that angers me the most these days is how we're still talking about Joe Biden's cognitive abilities and whether he was diminished while he was president of the United States. Of course, Jake Tapper came out with this book. If he was a journalist in any way and what anything he said is true in that book, that should have came up while he was president. Could have saved us from some problems. But no, he waits till after the fact, that pussy ass bitch, and releases his book so he can make money. I used to like Jake Tapper, but I see him for who he is. He's just an opportunist. He's trying to make a buck, and he's nowhere near being a fucking journalist. But my question has always been, if Joe had diminished cognitive abilities during his presidency, right now, as we sit right now, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? I mean, let's take a look at what Joe Biden did while he was in office. Did he screw up? Did he cause the stock market to crash? Did he cause prices to go up? Did he cause unemployment to go up? No, just the opposite of all those things. And in his first 2 years in office, he was probably the most productive president in history. Now, the second 2 years less productive, but that wasn't his fault. That was because we had the House controlled by Republicans. And we know Republicans don't do jack shit about jack shit. And they're proving it every day. They've got the smallest amount of bills passed in the first 100 days in the history of this country. They're a do nothing group. And when they do something, well, then they usually fuck it up. That's the one thing we can always count on. But in terms of Joe Biden's cognitive ability, here's the thing. Who cares? He's a private citizen right now. He has cancer. Just leave the dude alone, for fuck's sake. He did a good job when he was in there, whether he had cognitive issues or not. Let's focus on the problem at hand. How about the cognitive abilities of the sitting president of the United States? The sitting president that's making decisions that affect all of us. And of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump. It's funny, they love to talk about Joe Biden's issues, but they never talk about, and when I say they, I'm talking about the media, talk about Donald Trump's cognitive issues. He's constantly saying fucking ridiculous stuff, unhinged stuff, stupid stuff. He did a commencement speech for the graduating class from West Point. So all the cadets are there, and he's going to give the speech. Now, normally in these kind of speeches, it's hopefully informative, inspirational, that sort of thing. That wasn't the case in this commencement speech. Oh, big surprise, Donald Trump went another way. Now, during this speech, he spent most of the time glorifying himself about his election win, about the economy, even though it's bullshit, not to mention his golfing prowess. Yeah, that's what he talked about. And then he went off on tangents that nobody understands what the hell he was getting at when he was doing it. He was talking about trophy wives, for fuck's sake. Now, if anybody should be questioned about their cognitive ability, it should be Donald Trump. I know some people are, but not enough. Joe Biden has one bad debate and the world falls in on him. What is the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in this situation? The problem is the parties that they represent. Joe Biden has a bad debate. Republicans call him out. What do the Democrats do? They monkey pile on top of Joe Biden. They tear him down too. And by doing that, they probably cost the Democrats the elections and the presidency, the House, and the Senate. But what do the Republicans do? They ignore it. They don't talk about it. They say it's a hoax. They say it's a fake. Now, I'm not saying what the Republicans are doing is correct or the right way to do things. But Jesus Christ, if you have a party, why don't you stand up for the people leading your party, for fuck's sake? You got Donald Trump saying crazy shit, doing crazy shit, harming this country. And the Democrats will jump all over Joe Biden. But they'll sit back with their thumbs up their asses regarding Republicans. Here's another example. I brought this up before. David Hogg comes out. He's the vice chair of the DNC, mainly a ceremonial position. And David Hogg is a young man who was caught up in a school shooting years ago. He's since become an activist, and he's a very sharp young man. He's come out with a concept that maybe we should primary some of these Democratic candidates in safe positions because they're not doing anything or they're too old. Now, the Democrats don't like this shit. They don't like anybody ruffling feathers. But I think David Hogg has a good idea, especially when you look at our current situation with the House of Representatives and the Senate to a certain extent. Now, the big, beautiful bill just passed in the House by one vote, one fucking vote. But did you know that we're missing a few votes because we've got people in this session who have died? 3 people on the Democratic side who have died. Then we go to the Senate and we have this Fetterman clown who's worried about even coming to work because he's saying that people are weaponizing his mental health issues. You see what I mean? We've got people in positions, in powerful positions and seats in the House and in the Senate. We need them to be there. We need them to be doing what they do in order to fight against the Trump-levox. But we don't, because we have people that are either ill and dying or old and dying or just a little fucking goofy like Fetterman. I think David Hogg has the right thing in mind, uh, that we need to look at who's in these positions, even though they might be able to win their their seat every time easily. If once they get there, they don't do anything, what's the fucking point at this point? So I think David Hogg's on the right path. It's just a matter of whether or not the Democrats will allow him to continue it. I've said this before on TikToks. I've said this before in podcasts. We take a look at the way Democrats did things leading up to the November 5th election. They lost the presidency, they lost the House, and they lost the Senate. To me, that seems like you did something wrong. You didn't do a good job. So when you do something wrong and you don't do a good job, I don't know, call me crazy, but maybe try something fucking different. It goes to what I've always said. They're playing politics as if it were the 90s or the early 2000s. But the fact of the matter is, this is 2025, and politics isn't politics anymore. It's an all out street fight, it's an all out Donnybrook. And you better be able to compete at that level. Otherwise, you're going to get run over. And on November 5th, the Democrats got run over. So, wouldn't it make sense at this point to change things up a little bit? Well, we'll see if they do that. Um, Now that Jerry Conley has passed away, he was put in as the ranking member of the Oversight Committee. AOC wanted to be there, but she didn't get voted in. And they will say, well, it's an election. You either win or you lose. Now, if Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries says you vote for this person as opposed to this person, that's what happens. So now Jerry Conley is gone. We don't have a ranking member in the Oversight Committee. So who is it going to be? AOC is not going to run for it again, but I hear Jasmine Crockett is. And then I heard some name of some old white guy that I'd never heard of before as the chair or the ranking member of the Oversight Committee. That's who the establishment is putting up. If we're going to change things in the Democratic Party, we need to start now. We need to utilize the talents of, say, Jasmine Crockett, because she is a fighter. She is a street fighter. And if we're going to compete with the Republicans, we need to be at that fucking level. So hopefully that will be the case. Um, Now, of course, we had this situation. Donald Trump is in a pissing contest with Harvard. He basically, the administration went to Harvard and asked for any disciplinary documentation regarding immigrant students. Now you know what they were going to do with that. They were going to take that. Oh, guy, this guy's a criminal. This guy is a rebel of some sort. So we're going to deport them. And Harvard did the right thing. Harvard said, "Fuck yourself. We're not doing that." So Donald Trump, of course, gets mad. He gets butthurt, and he doubles down and triples down. He tells Harvard, "Okay, you can no longer enroll foreign students." And on top of that, the 20% of your population or your enrollment is um, immigrants. So now you got to get them to transfer the hell out of Harvard, which seems absolutely ridiculous. It seems silly. But that's what he says. And that's the kind of business that Donald Trump conducts. Well, of course, they take it to court. And once again, Donald Trump loses in court and says, no, you can't do that. Now, I heard a story. I don't know if this is true, but it could be. You know, Barron's 18. He graduated from high school. He's off to go to college. And the rumor is that he applied to Harvard. And Harvard didn't accept him because, well, his grades weren't good enough. And his dad is a fucking fascist. That may have some bearing on it, too. So what they're suggesting is because they didn't accept Barron, this is why Donald Trump is cracking down Harvard. And while that sounds crazy, it's certainly not beneath Donald Trump to do something like this. So you have to wonder, is that really what happened? I don't know. But Donald Trump is picking the wrong foe here. I've said this before too. Harvard. Who comes out of Harvard? Some of our finest lawyers, some of our most powerful people in politics, some of the wealthiest families in the country. These are the people that are coming out of Harvard. Why in the hell would you go have a pissing contest with Harvard? Why would you do that? It makes no sense. These people are not going to take your shit. And all the people that have gone to Harvard before you, which is a large part of the people in Congress and in law firms and owning big companies, how do you think they're going to respond to that? See, Donald Trump doesn't care about that. He thinks he's the biggest gorilla in the room. Trouble is, he's not. He gets weaker by the fucking day. And as he gets weaker, then he keeps losing and losing. So this Harvard thing is probably not going to go well for Donald Trump. He's not going to beat them. There's nothing in the laws that says he can even do the things that he claims he's going to do. You know, it's funny about Donald Trump. He will pick out people to go after that make no sense, and he has really no opportunity to beat. I'll give you an example. President Trump's relationship with Apple and CEO Tim Cook has kind of devolved in recent weeks as the president has ramped up pressure on the iPhone maker over its overseas manufacturing. Now, Trump threatened Friday to put a 25% tariff on Apple products if the company failed to move more of its manufacturing back to the U.S., just weeks after publicly scolding Cook over his firm's reliance on Indian manufacturing. Now, see, this is what I don't understand. Donald Trump maybe can put tariffs on countries, but can he put tariffs on individual corporations? I don't I don't think that's true. I don't know what he hopes to accomplish. Now, if Donald Trump accomplished what he'd hoped to accomplish, and they could actually put everything together in America, the price of the iPhone would triple or quadruple. So that's a good move. Donald Trump is just trying to be the tough guy and trying to get people to bend to him. And I got to be honest with you. Apple's a big enough company, and Donald or Tim Cook is a powerful enough CEO where they will probably tell him to fuck himself. And besides that, I don't know if there is even any legal basis for him to put a tariff on an individual company. The tariff threat marks a sharp break from the more cordial relationship that Cook managed to maintain with Trump in his first term when he scored a key tariff exemption. It puts Apple with their back against the wall a little because India was going to be the go to navigate the China tariffs. Wedbush securities analyst Dan Ives said, adding that this is putting Apple in an almost impossible spot. So basically, the first time around, Donald Trump gave him a carve out. No doubt Donald Trump needed something in return, maybe a little pocket change or some deference in something. I don't who the fuck knows with Donald Trump. Now Trump and Cook have had good rapport for a long time. A bright spot compared to the president's often tense relationships with Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. He's gotten along with Tim Cook better than those two. And of course, the relationship paid dividends for Apple in Trump's first term when the president exempted electronics, including the company's smartphones, from his China tariffs at the time. Can you imagine if those tariffs applied to iPhones and the price of those iPhones went through the roof? That would not have been good for Donald Trump, but now he doesn't have to get reelected, so he doesn't give a shit. Now, Cook seems to have run up against the limitations of his relationship in the Trump second term, in which the president appears to be more committed to tariff uh, Apple. And I guess he's not really tariffing Apple. He's basically not exempting Apple like he did the first time around. Leo Gebbe says, uh, he's an analyst in the industry, says undoubtedly this is really a difficult environment for Apple to be operating in. I think the move to now start the threat of tariffs once again is quite symptomatic of the unpredictable nature of this administration. And see, that's the big problem. He wants all these people to negotiate with him, but nobody wants to negotiate with him because you can't trust him. He'll say one thing one moment and he'll say something totally different the next moment. So how in the world do you cut a deal with a guy like that? I mean, let's be honest. When we had the NAFTA agreement that he upgraded to the ACMA, he cut the deal with Canada and Mexico. Things were running pretty smoothly with that slight variation to NAFTA. But then he gets into this time around and says, "Yeah, that deal's no good. You mean the deal that you cut with Canada and Mexico, the deal that you're now violating, that treaty, you're violating it, and it's Canada and Mexico's fault? Please, motherfucker." But this is how Donald Trump does business, and this is why people aren't willing really to negotiate with him. He talked about a deal he cut with UK. In essence, there was no deal. He got nothing out of it, but he needed to announce a win so that we still believe that he was a master negotiator. He announced a deal with China, but there was no deal. There was just a pause on the tariffs of 90 days. And he didn't get rid of all the tariffs. There still is a 30% tariff, which is still astronomical, and it's going to raise prices. We understand that while ships are now again coming from China to the United States, it's 30 to 40% less than it once was. So that's going to have a significant effect on the shelves in retail outlets, and people are going to feel the pinch because prices will go up and the shelves will be limited. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. Now, if it wasn't bad enough that Donald Trump is destroying our economy, the one thing I've talked about a lot is, do we even have national security anymore? We've got Pete Hegseth going on the Signal app, giving away top secret information to anybody who fucking wants it. We've got we've got Pete Hegseth now leading a prayer group in the Pentagon. Well, that's fucking nice. A little illegal. But on top of that, President Trump is slashing half of the National Security Council staff as part of a restructuring process under Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's also serving as National Security Advisor. That's right. He's the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor. He's also the nation's archivist. This fucker's got so many side gigs. How does he keep it all straight? Apparently, he doesn't. When we saw him being questioned in in Congress, he kind of fell all over himself. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's going the opposite way of what he once thought because now he's complicit and compliant with Donald Trump. So the administration is downsizing the NSC, made up of top advisors and experts tasked with advising the president on national security and foreign policy matters, by cutting around half of the current 350 person workforce who will be transferred to other posts with the government. A White House official confirmed that to The Hill on Saturday. Now, the shrinking of the NSC, which was made official Friday, is seen by the administration as a way to streamline the process within the agency and allow the national security decision making to accelerate. Donald Trump thinks you can just cut anybody and everything will be cheaper and more streamlined. Well, Elon Musk has been going around trying to do that for some time, cutting people, and slashing services. But the funny thing about it is, If you took the first 100 days of Donald Trump's tenure this time around, and you took that same period a year ago, Donald Trump's administration has spent $200 billion more than last year at the same time. So where's the money savings happening? What's being saved? Trump folks will always say, you're just mad because they're saving all this money. Really? Why is it costing us more money? Why are you pushing this bill that's going to add 4 or 5 trillion to the debt? It sounds like the exact opposite of what you promised. Well, it is exact opposite of what they promised. Now, as part of the overhaul, Andy Baker and Robert Gabriel will now work as deputy national security advisors. Another source familiar with the matter told The Hill. Gabriel was an assistant to the president for policy. Baker will keep working as his post as Vice President Vance's national security advisor while adding the NSC to his portfolio. This is like when you work at a job and you're doing your job and you're kicking your ass and you're working your job. And then they try to cut costs, so they fire a bunch of people. They don't rehire people for their positions. They just take those positions and give them to the one person still working their ass off. That's never effective. It's never efficient. And it just doesn't fucking work. It doesn't fucking work. So Donald Trump continues to slash. Now, it'll probably go to court and they'll find that he can't legally do that. Something like that happened with the education department. He wanted to shut that down and cut that completely out. But that went to court. And of course, they said, yeah, no, you can't do that. I suspect he'll take it to the Supreme Court at some point, but I think the Supreme Court is even getting a little tired of the bullshit, the constant harassment that the Supreme Court is getting with these frivolous lawsuits. I suspect the Supreme Court is going to push back a little bit because they're being made to look like fools. It's funny. We're seeing John Roberts, the Chief Justice, and Comey Barrett kind of pushing back. We were talking about this on the podcast recently about Amy Comey Barrett. Now, she's ultra religious, ultra right. She was even a member of a cult, technically speaking. But she seems to be a little more reasonable than some of the other clowns on the Supreme Court, a la Alito and Clarence Thomas. Those two will always vote for Donald Trump, no matter how crazy, no matter how stupid. But thankfully, John Robert is trying to balance things out a little bit more, and Amy Coney Barrett is looking at things realistically. So what I was talking to you about with Ed, uh, there's supposed to be no ideological partisanship in the Supreme Court, and there shouldn't be. I mean, whether you're conservative or you're liberal shouldn't make a difference. The rule of law should make the difference. You make decisions based on the rule of law. But that's not what's happening in the Supreme Court, and certainly not happening with what Donald Trump is doing. Now, earlier I alluded to this book that Jake Tapper wrote and Axios reporter Alex Thompson. They take a deep dive into former President Joe Biden's mental decline and the shocking ways in which top advisors endeavor to conceal it as he vied for a second term. The co authors spoke with the Mediaite editor Aidan McLaughlin on this week's episode of Press Club about their book, and they uncovered about this scandal that and the sharply divided reactions to it. They go on to say there wasn't a lot of good investigative reporting going on for what was actually happening behind the scenes as the inner circle controlled for Biden's increasing limitations and how it was affecting how he was actually doing his job. It's not just the Biden administration that participated in the cover up, they say. The media has taken heat for alleged complicity in helping to shield the severity of Biden's condition from the public. I call bullshit on that. I mean, what the fuck happened after that debate? The media was all over him. His own party was all over him. It was covered up. And this is what the Trump administration does. They have all this shit they fucked up, the illegality and the corruption that they're committing, and they say, yeah, but what about Joe Biden? He wasn't in a right mind when he was in the presidential Oval Office. Well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But the fact of the matter is, he did the job that was expected, didn't put us in a war, improved the economy, improved a lot of things. So, again, what difference does that make? Who fucking cares? Who cares? I'm worried about today. Whatever happened yesterday, it's over, it's done. There's nothing we can do with that. What happened today? What's going on? How is it going to hurt this country? And we know that it is based on the things that Donald Trump is doing, going to West Point and giving this unhinged commencement speech. He doesn't even know how to do a commencement speech without self aggrandizing himself. So, anyway, they're going to keep pushing this thing about this book, and oh no, it was corrupt, it was criminal. They were hiding what Joe Biden could or couldn't do. Who cares? Who really fucking cares at this point? I'm not worried about Joe Biden at this stage because we've got bigger problems. We've got an economy. We've got people being deported. We've got all kinds of issues going on. I don't care about what happened yesterday or 2 days ago or even 2 years ago. All I know from Joe Biden is when he was in office and he had the ability to do it, he did a lot of good things, maybe more good things than any other president in history. So if his cognitive ability was diminished, cool. He did a good job. That's what we pay him for. That's what we expected. Unlike with Donald Trump, where many of the Trump-leflucks uh, presumed that he would lower prices, lower inflation, make everything better, get rid of the brown people. But guess what? That's not working. So, what's more important, the actual results or these claims of mental issues or physical issues of that sort? There are even some people that are questioning whether Joe Biden had this cancer for the last 2 years or not, and weren't told about it. Well, it's very clear that this cancer is aggressive. And because it's aggressive, it means it moves fast. So if 2 years ago he had this cancer, which is not true, it probably would have killed him by now because it was an aggressive cancer. There's no such thing as thriving for 2, 3, or 4 years while you have cancer when it's an aggressive stage 4 cancer. Now, of course, Donald Trump said it was stage 9. Oh my God, it's not stage 9. That was some other number that Donald Trump confused because Donald Trump is always confused. And let's talk about confusion. We mentioned this earlier too. Senator John Fetterman, the Democrat from Pennsylvania, says he feels pressured to show up to votes and hearings that he finds useless, adding his mental health struggles have been weaponized. Let me understand this. There are some votes that you don't think are important enough for you to go vote on. You were elected a U.S. senator. There are votes all the time in the Senate. Even the smallest ridiculous vote, that's your job. That's your responsibility. I don't want to hear fucking whining about how tough it is for you. There are people around John Fetterman that are suggesting that he's not up to the task of being a U.S. senator. He's not competent at this point. And whether he be Democrat or Republican, I don't really care. If he's not competent, if he can't handle the situation, they should get rid of him. Now, I don't know how they do that. I think he has to resign. And then Josh Shapiro can name another Democrat to take his seat. But see, this goes back to what I was talking about before. The Democrats want to hold steady, keep everybody in their jobs. But we've got people dying in the jobs because of their age or their health. We've got John Fetterman, maybe not up to the task. We're on a razor's edge with the Republicans. We need all the firepower we can get. We can't afford to have another Kristen Sinema or a Joe Manchin or a John Fetterman in the Senate. We can't afford to have not seats not filled because of illness or death. Like I said, if we're going to fight this thing, we need to be full strength and we need to be fighting from the get go. And we can't do it under these circumstances. Now, Fetterman said, my doctor warned years ago, after it's public that you're getting help for depression, people will weaponize that. That's what Fetterman told the New York Times in an interview published Saturday. Simple things are turned. That's exactly what happened. Oh, heaven forbid. Don't you think the voters of Pennsylvania should know if you have some mental illness? Wouldn't that have some bearing on whether they voted for you or not? Now, Fetterman has been previously vocal about his struggles with depression after he survived a stroke in 2022. He said that nearly killed him. Fetterman has missed 18% of the floor vote since taking office. That's actually better than I thought. The new report details Fetterman's extreme reluctance with performing his senatorial work duties, including showing up for procedural votes that he calls performative. Yeah, but it's in your job description, motherfucker. If you can't show up, get a job where you can show up. Fetterman told the Times he would rather spend time with his family than show up for work. Yeah, I bet any mom or dad would say that. But you know what? You got to show up for work or you get fucking fired. You got to show up for work if you expect to get paid and support your family. So I'm tired of the fucking whining. We are in a dire situation right now. If we've got one weak link, we need to replace that fucking link. He goes on to say the votes I missed were overwhelmingly procedural. They even called bed check votes, he told the publication. I had to make a decision getting here and sticking my thumb in the door for 3 seconds for a procedural vote or spend Monday night as a dad-daughter date. I get really tired of people doing all they can to get out of work. I'm sorry this is infringing on your personal life. Everybody that works has to deal with that to a certain extent. They have to deal with that. Don't make excuses. Every mom, every dad would rather spend time with their kids than going to work. But guess what? For most people, that's not a fucking option. The first time senator has faced renewed scrutiny following a New York Magazine report in which his former chief of staff spoke out against him. Adam Gentlison, who served as Fetterman's chief of staff from 2022 to 2024, revealed he wrote a letter last May to Fetterman's doctor detailing warnings of the senator's declining mental health. I think John is on a bad trajectory, and I'm really worried about him, Gentlison said in the letter. Fetterman lamented having to show up to hearings and express frustration that he's picked last to ask questions because of seniority rules. Oh, Jesus Christ, poor me. I'm sorry he has some mental illness or some illness problems, but this is kind of an important job. He's also faced criticism for his full-throated support of Israel and its military bombardment of Gaza. More than 50,000 people have been killed by Israel, with a nearly third of the dead under 18. Known for wearing shorts and a Carhartt hoodie around the Capitol, Fetterman once donned a suit and a tie on the House floor last year when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech to Congress. Now, I have a little problem with this. I have no problem with the country of Israel or the people of Israel. But let's be honest. Benjamin Netanyahu is little more than a fucking mini Donald Trump. Netanyahu is perpetuating that war in the Gaza Strip. And the reason he's doing that is because he's got some problems of his own. If that war ends, it's conceivable that he could be indicted and convicted and obviously kicked out of office. So there is no motivation for him to stop that war. This is what we talked about prior to the election. Everybody was on Joe Biden's ass for not doing enough for Gaza and the Palestinian people. So they either didn't vote or they voted for Donald Trump. Well, how do you like me now? Because now Israel is doing whatever the fuck they wanted. As I've stated before, the one thing Joe Biden was doing that you didn't recognize is he put reins on Benjamin Netanyahu. You don't get to do everything you want to do. You need to get some humanitarian support into Gaza. Joe Biden did that for the people of Gaza, the Palestinians. Donald Trump, as I predicted, came into office and basically said, Ben, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Do whatever you want. They're talking about occupying Gaza. They're talking about limiting humanitarian support. Hell, there's one member of Congress in our Congress that said, we should just nuke it. This is the kind of mentality we're dealing with. And with John Fetterman supporting completely Benjamin Netanyahu, that is a fucking problem. That is a big problem. And we need to address that fucking problem. All right. GOP congressman falsely claims Trump's tax bill won't cut Medicaid or food benefits. That is an absolute, outright fucking lie. That's what it is. It's a fucking lie. The bill itself is very clear. They're going to cut 880 billion from Medicaid. Ultimately, it trickles down to Medicare, not to mention SNAP programs. It says that in the bill. So how does this Republican representative not see that? Guy's name is Derek Van Orden. He's a Republican from Wisconsin. Oh, big surprise. Says Republicans aren't actually cutting anyone's federal health or food benefits in Trump's sweeping tax bill, a plan that slashes $1 trillion from Medicaid and food assistance programs. He says, I want to be super clear. Now, whenever they say that, I'm going to be clear, or he was clear, or she was clear, that means it's not fucking clear. I want to be super clear. When these Democrats have been lying to you, saying we're cutting Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP benefits, that we're going to cut all of these programs, they're lying. No, we're not. Van Orden said Thursday on a Wisconsin-based podcast, The Meg Ellefson Show on WSAU. He probably figured nobody was going to hear it. He could go to his home state and lie to them, and people would buy into it. Because when it comes down to it, all he really cares about whether or not he's going to get reelected. If he said that it did cut Medicaid, he would definitely be committing political suicide and he wouldn't get reelected. Remember what I've always told you. The most important thing to these people is to get reelected. Not to do any good, not to help the people, not to help the government, not to help this country. He goes on to say, we did this early enough so folks are going to understand that we're telling the truth. Doubt it. It's fantastic, said Van Orden. I want anybody in my district to call me if their benefits have been dropped by a nickel. Not going to happen. Well, Representative Van Orden, by the time they call you when their benefits have been cut, a little fucking late at that point. You've already passed the bill. Yeah. Wait till people's benefits get cut. See, that's the thing. You can lie about this now, but if they pass this bill and when it happens, because it will happen, these people are going to have to be running in place trying to figure out what the fuck to do. This is the thing about Republicans. They don't look past the end of their nose. They don't think about what the end result is going to be and how bad it's going to be. I just want what I want. I want it now, and it'll be great if you give it to me now. Now, it's not clear what the GOP congressman is talking about. Trump's hugely consequential tax and spending bill, which House Republicans passed Thursday and sent to the Senate, represents the largest upward transfer of wealth in U.S. history. It cuts $1 trillion from federal health and food programs to help pay for $4 trillion in new tax cuts for rich people. Pretty cut and dried. That's what it is. My question to Van Orden is how do you even rationalize this? How do you come up with this fucking lie? The effects of this bill, if it became law, would be devastating for millions of low income people who rely on Medicaid and supplemental nutritional assistance programs, formerly known as food stamps. The bill would kick an estimated 8 million people off of health insurance. 8 million people spread out over 50 states. I don't know what that breaks down to individually by state, but I guarantee you, Mr. Orden, somebody's going to be kicked off their health care in your state. And then what the fuck are you going to do? How are you going to twist that? Now, meanwhile, the bill's expanded work requirements for SNAP would result in an estimated 1.5 million families losing all food benefits and 1.2 million families losing some, according to an analysis from the Urban Institute, a public policy think tank. Now, those numbers include an estimated 48,000 children who would lose assistance entirely and 1.5 million children who would get fewer benefits. An estimate by the Congressional Budget Office puts that number of people losing some or all benefits at about 3 million. So that's not going to affect Wisconsin? I beg to fucking differ. I don't think that's true. Angie Craig from Minnesota said, as a mother and someone who at times relied on food assistance as a child, these numbers are heartbreaking. The top Democrat on the House Agricultural Committee, she requested the CBO's analysis of the bill's effects on SNAP benefits. It's infuriating that Republicans in Congress are willing to make our children go hungry so they can give a tax break to the rich, Craig said in a statement. We must protect these basic need programs to help Americans afford food when they fall on hard times. And let's just say they're falling on hard times at the hands of Donald Trump. The economy is going to shit. Unemployment is going up. GDP is going negative. And they want to cut the help that people need and will need even more once the effects of these tariffs and other things that Donald Trump are doing, once those effects happen, there are going to be more people that need more help, not less people for less help. It's going to be a disaster when that happens. And somebody like this Van Orden guy, I would love to get him on this show. Let him tell me that there isn't cuts to Medicaid or Medicare. See, this is what I don't understand about Republicans like Donald Trump. Donald Trump goes to Congress and goes, I want the big, beautiful bill, but don't cut Medicaid. Is he just flat out lying, or does he not know what's in the bill? I'm willing to guess that he's never read the bill. I'm willing to guess that everybody around him just tells him what he needs, what he wants to hear. Oh, no, we're not cutting Medicaid. And then Medicaid will get cut. The thing about it is that if they cut Medicaid, that is a red line that's going to be crossed. And as Will often say, that's when the pitchforks and the torches come out. If your children don't have the food they need, if people's medical care is cut, they're going to be some angry motherfuckers. And they're going to push back. There's just no question that that's going to happen. And if they pass this bill, people are going to feel it. They're going to feel it mightily. And people are going to be angry. And then what do the Republicans do? Are they going to lie and say, even though you got cut, you didn't really get cut? What's happening to you isn't right. What I'm telling you is true. And that's how they do business. You know, as we're getting down toward the end here, I wanted to bring somebody up that we haven't heard from in a while. And I'm glad we haven't heard from him. But former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, spurred confusion and conspiracy theories among his own followers on Saturday by posting a single letter on his social media. Giuliani, an ally of President Donald Trump, who recently volunteered to take a job of special counsel and prosecute Joe Biden after it was revealed that the former president has prostate cancer, took to X over the weekend to post what could have been a mistaken letter. What he wrote was the letter B. What the fuck does that mean? An Ohio chair corrected Giuliani, appearing to suggest a shorthand for win. W, she wrote. A popular right wing called Forever Alone 11 made a joke about the post adding INGO. Now, a lot of the Republicans were fairly nice about Joe Biden when they found out he was sick. But as I've said before, don't expect the Trumplefucks to do that. Expect them to jump all over this, make fun, make jokes, and all that sort of stuff. And that's cool if you want to do it. It's something I would expect out of these fucks. But what you have to understand, your day is coming. Donald Trump is not healthy. He's not in his right mind. Things are falling apart with Donald Trump. And when they do fall apart, I got to tell you, there's going to be one hell of a party. They'll be dancing in the streets. People will be laughing, high fiving, doing all kinds of stuff. You Republicans, if you think we're going to be nice and sensitive about whatever happens to Donald Trump in the not so distant future, I'm sorry, you are going to be disappointed. Because not only this country, but the world will be ecstatic about the demise of Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, we're getting a little closer to the big day, the big celebration, if you will. That is the parade that Donald Trump is planning to have on June 14th, which also happens to be his birthday. But the point of it is, in his words, is to regale and appreciate our military, our great and powerful military. I know Donald Trump will want to be sitting in some kind of stand and everybody can cheer for him. Oh, look at Donnie. He's got all these big weapons and it's his birthday. Let's give him a big hug. I've said many times that I didn't think that was going to happen. I mean, we're talking about $100 million expenditure in putting on this parade. It's going to be an absolute shit show because everything Donald Trump does is a shit show. It's going to tear up the streets. It's going to cause all kinds of problems. And I never really thought it was going to happen. But as I've said before, I'm now kind of hoping it does happen. And the reason I'm hoping it does happen is because Donald Trump is known for fucking everything up. And this is going to be on a big stage. We're going to have these people coming down the street, maybe 6,000 military personnel, maybe 50 military vehicles, no, 150 military vehicles, maybe 50 helicopters, maybe some flyovers. Oh, it's going to be ridiculous. And at some point, Donald Trump will fuck this up somehow, some way. And as I've said before, this seems like a silly thing to do. When you live in a country that no longer has national security and you bring your military and your president and all your other politicians, to me, that seems like a big ass target, just asking for a problem. This seems like a very opportune time when somebody with terroristic tendencies would want to stick their nose in this and fuck things up. Now, I don't want to see that happen, but sometimes you just have to be careful. You have to use some common sense. And unfortunately, the Republicans don't typically do that. I hope the way it goes when it goes off, it goes off without a hitch, and Donald Trump is simply embarrassed by the whole fucking spectacle. But I am concerned about the prospect of something negative happening. You can presume that there's going to be a lot of protesting out there, and this is going to make Donald Trump mad. He'll probably suggest violence against these protesters. I only say that because he's done it before. I suspect if he's embarrassed this time around, he will do it again. Let's hope that's not the case. But this parade is going to be pretty interesting and maybe eye-opening for some Republicans even. The silliness of it, the whole concept of it is just bad from the get-go. And when Donald Trump speaks, if it comes out of his mouth, as far as he's concerned, it's direct from Jesus. It couldn't be wrong. But generally, it is wrong. It is wrong, and he ends up looking like a fool. So I'm hoping that he has the parade and it ends up pretty much like I expected, a big fucking joke. And we're still waiting for Republicans to realize that Donald Trump is no longer an asset. He's little more than a liability, and he's only hurting their chances in the midterms and in 2028 every day he stays in office. I have to wonder what that one thing is going to be to make the Republicans say, okay, fucking enough. Is it that he's going to do something even more ridiculous than he already has with regards to the way he speaks and the unhinged nature of Donald Trump? Is he going to commit further crimes? Or is he just going to keel over on a stage someplace and fall on his orange fucking diapered ass? I don't know. But I wanted to bring one last thing up as we're wrapping things up here. You remember that dinner he had with the crypto folks? This was nothing more than a grift. This was little more than a grift. He goes there, he's got people giving him money for the crypto, which goes in his pocket. And by virtue of them paying for this crypto, they now have availability with Donald Trump, influence over Donald Trump. That is highly and completely illegal. Now, Donald Trump and some of his people said, well, this is Donald Trump on his own time. This isn't while he was president. And they also said that this dinner was top secret. Nobody was going to know about it. We couldn't see the list or anything. Funny thing is, the next day, what did we see? We saw a lot of video from this event. We saw the food that they served, which looked like shit. We saw him talking at a podium with the presidential seal in front of it. That doesn't sound like it was on his own time. I mean, he's using the White House, he's using the White House staff. No doubt, taxpayers paid for the food and whatever else was handed out there. But when Carolyn Levitt, his spokesperson, was being questioned about it, she said, no, he's doing it on his own time. Didn't look like it. But she fucked up when she said that. We all know about Donald Trump's immunity from the Supreme Court. But in that immunity, it specifically says anything he's doing in his official capacity as President of the United States, he has immunity. Well, this grift of a dinner, they tell us, was not within his regular duties. It was on his own time. So the crimes committed in that dinner should be fully, they should be fully able to indict and prosecute him for the crimes he committed on that day. There's going to be more coming out about this, but what I was getting at, the fact that we saw videos after this secret event tells me there are people within Donald Trump's circle that are leaking shit. And I know they're always looking for people leaking shit, but I think some people are finally getting to the point where this is crazy. We're all going to go to fucking jail. Somebody needs to do something. Now, they don't have the courage to do it themselves, but they will leak shit. And this is good news. I think as things get crazier and he does more ridiculous things, we are going to see more leaks and we're going to see more people leaving his employ and maybe coming out and speaking out against him. That's usually the way these things end up. People start drifting away and have been pushed too far, and they have to expose the criminality and the corruption that is going on. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it seems like that's happening more and more. And maybe there are people around Donald Trump that have had just about a fucking enough. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. As I said, this might be a little shorter than most. It's still about an hour. I did the best I could with a cold and on various cold medicines, so I'm not at the peak of my abilities. But I do appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.